Welcome back to Following the Gong, a podcast for Schreier Scholars bringing you mentoring on demand from Scholar alumni. I'm your host, Sean Goheen, and our guests today joining us virtually from outside of Philly are attorneys Joe Kernen and Victor Ficarra. Joe is class of 1986 and Victor is class of 2021. Joe, Victor, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Sean.
Always great to have two of our awesome supporters joining us. Joe, you're specifically, as you can see in your background, joining us from our Penn State Brandywine campus today, which is really cool. But I want to start at the beginning with your Penn State origin story about how you first came to Penn State University Park as a student.
Sure. I was thinking about this. I think my path was probably a lot different than most current or recent graduates. As late as 11th grade, I had no plans to go to college. I was going to be a professional baseball player or work in a factory or a store somewhere until a guidance counselor pretty firmly told me I needed to apply to college. She picked them. She said, based on your grades, let's make Bucknell your reach, Dickinson your middle, Penn State your safety. Did what I was told, applied to all three, didn't visit them or go to anything like that, waited till the spring, got into all three, and only then hopped in the car with my mother, went to visit Bucknell. Those kids were too fancy and rich for me. I didn't think I'd be comfortable there. Went to Dickinson. No disrespect to people who enjoy Dickinson, but Carlisle and the campus didn't do it for me. And then we pulled into Happy Valley on a sunny day, and I just loved it, and it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, no disrespect to either Bucknell or Dickinson. Not every school is for every person, right? And if you're watching this, Penn State was clearly the school for you, or hopefully is if you're an applicant.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's all about fit. I mean, I went through with my daughters when they were picking their colleges. They couldn't have been more different. 40,000 students between the ages of 18 and 22 in all those facilities, that really spoke to me, and it was a good fit for me.
Absolutely. And we'll dive into kind of even just the different size campuses within Penn State in a moment. But Joe, you talked about rolling up into Happy Valley on a beautiful day. What was it like being here as a student in the early days of the Scholars Program? How did you find your way from, you said you wanted to be a baseball player or potentially not even go to college, to being a university scholar?
Honors college coming out of high school. I certainly didn't have the SATs or the grades to be invited into it. But I got a 4.0 my freshman year, received a letter in the summer inviting me to join the University Scholars Program. And I read it, and it sounded like a whole lot of extra work, and I threw it away. Got a 4.0 my second year. Letter came in the mail that summer after sophomore year, and I wisely asked my mother what she thought. And she said, "You're being lazy. If you don't do it, you say you're a serious student, you should do it." So I did it. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
It's amazing how parents can be such a great support network at times, like really just like giving you a nice kick in the butt there, Joe, of like, why would you skip out on this opportunity?
Exactly. Sometimes you need that.
Now, Victor, what about you? So you are a alum of Penn State Brandywine. How did you end up being a Schreier Scholar at that campus that Joe is actually sitting on as we record this?
There you go. Yeah. I was going to say some things never changed. Similarly, I went to guidance counselors instead of, one safety, one reach, one sort of in the middle. I did 3 reach, 3 in the middle, 3 safety, ended up with the slate of schools that I applied to, toured all over the place. I feel like, especially given all the information, all the articles you can read, podcasts you can listen to about going to college these days, I was just endlessly reading, trying to learn as much as I could. I ended up touring Penn State Brandywine, I think 3 times. One time, meeting with the athletics department, another time meeting with the local honors college, and another time just doing a general accepted student day. And after talking to all the different people, I found that the relationships I could foster in that campus community would be sort of an insurmountable benefit that I could have at Penn State. You get all these benefits of having sort of local connections, smaller class sizes, and all that, but the resources of this large, national, but in the end, with all their broad connections to international university at this point. So that was really appealing to me. And it's so funny, Joe, I didn't even know you had applied to the University Scholars Program as a student. I did essentially the same exact thing. So after my first semester, I had gotten the Freshman Chancellor's Award, which was for a student that had a 4.0 GPA. I decided to take that along with sort of the extracurriculars that I was a part of and applying to Schreier, and that's how I was accepted myself. So I started in the Shire Honors Program as a sophomore and then ended up going through the whole process up and through graduation.
Yeah, so you were smarter than me. You did it 1 year earlier. Good job.
Well, I think it's safe bet that everybody who's on this call right now recording this episode and everybody watching is pretty smart. So all around, we're doing great here. Now, Victor, as our very first guest on this show, who's a Brandywine grad, finally have a tick that one off on the checkbox. Can you share some perspectives on life as a Nittany Lion outside of Philadelphia, as we like to say up here at University Park?
Yeah, it's really fascinating because sort of the assumption would be that if you aren't at University Park, how can you possibly feel as connected with the greater Penn State community? But as the first one in my family to go to Penn State, it was really sort of family friends, whether they be, my friends' parents or my friends that ended up going to Penn State as well, who really helped play a massive role in making me feel connected to the university as a whole. So at Penn State Brandywine, we had certain programs like taking buses up to university parks. I still had season tickets to the football games my first and second year. So I was definitely making my fair share of trips up to University Park. But really, I think among the local benefits that I had at being at Penn State Brandywine would be sort of the access to the local companies that you could work for. So during my sophomore year, I had gone to a career fair in the fall. And then starting that winter into the spring, I was interning at a company while working at Penn State. So I was doing about 20 hours of work a week at a company that was in King of Prussia. So about 25 minutes from campus. And I was able to sort of connect with Penn State alum that worked there as well, because they were the ones that came to the career fair, but also, take all my business classes and everything as a student. So you get sort of that benefit of being connected with the greater university, still going up, connecting with alumni, that sort of thing. But all of these benefits of being in this very corporate heavy area just outside of Philadelphia. I mean, it's one of the biggest cities, not just in the country, but in the world. So it's a really nice added benefit while still getting that access to the Penn State community.
Yeah, Victor, can you talk about sort of those like internships and pre-professional experiences? Because you're very close in age to our current students. How did that inform your academic and professional journey? And what sort of lessons or experiences did you get that might be helpful for scholars as they're considering their summer internship opportunities?
Yeah, I guess I would tie it all back to just being involved. That's just not within your campus community, but sort of within the broader graduated and alumni community. So just starting on campus, I mean, off the bat, I was able to work during my spring semester of my freshman year as a line ambassador and as a peer tutor. So this gave me the opportunity to sort of have peer-to-peer connections, learning those communication skills. And then as a line ambassador, of course, you learn how to walk backwards while talking. Not sure if that helps in the workplace, but it felt like a great skill to have. But you also get this opportunity to talk with people of a wide variety of age groups. And those communication skills, I feel like, have been fostered and developed and have been very necessary in each of the subsequent internships I was able to do, and even now in postgraduate life.
Excellent. Yeah, I think walking backwards is definitely a skill, because if you can do that, then you can probably navigate any environment, right?
Yeah, I started walking backwards as a line ambassador, and then I was running backwards, as a basketball player, back on defense with the local team, or the varsity team, rather.
Yeah, so you were an athlete at Penn State Brandywine. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, those memories at practice, I long for those now that I'm in the workplace. So I have the opportunity to go just play basketball from 4 to 7 p.m. or tennis from 4 to 7 p.m. after I'm done my classes, and that's all I'm thinking about for that time period. Those memories with coaches, with other student athletes, with the administrators of our athletics program, you just can't replace those, really, and it's just not the same after graduation. It was a good opportunity to also meet people that were in different majors and different programs. Yeah, I was a business major. We had some people that were chemical engineering majors. We had some people that were doing 2+2, so they would go up to University Park. And when I would go visit at University Park, I would go see them, and it would be like, oh, this great catching up moment. But there were also plenty of students that stayed all 4 years and played sports all 4 years. And getting to kind of develop your craft, especially as a tennis player, because I had thought to myself, once I graduated high school, I'm just not going to be doing this with the same level of regularity. But ultimately, I was able to develop a lot as an athlete while I was at Penn State Brandywine, while also still getting to obviously have the athletic benefit, or the academic benefits rather, of being at such a large research university.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned majors. So, Victor, Joe, you came from different academic disciplines, and I want to talk about your respective paths to law school. But before we do that, I really want to talk about your honors thesis experiences and how that influenced your decisions and career. So we'll talk about law school next, but this question is all about the thesis. So, Joe, you are up first.
Sure, and it actually bleeds into law school. So, got the idea for the honors thesis in a graduate level class that I took junior year. Another one of the benefits of the honors program was a sociology of work class, and I took it with one of my best friends, Lou D'Ambrosio, who was in the business school, and we did a lot of reading about what people want out of their work experience, management practices, worker management relations. And we petitioned the school to allow us to do the thesis together, a business school person and a liberal arts person. And our initial thesis was based on a book that we had read that talked about there's a new breed of worker. And that is in the latter half of the 20th century, American workers no longer were motivated only by money. They needed to feel important. They needed to feel fulfilled. They wanted to pursue their passions. So the initial thought was, let's research that and talk about the implications for management strategies and whatnot. And through our early research, we thought we discovered that, in fact, that wasn't true at all. That even the early readings showed that workers always wanted these ego needs. They wanted to be feel like that they had a say in the workplace, that they were important, they were being treated well. But because of the legal landscape in the early days, no OSHA, no worker protections, no employee handbooks, no 800 numbers. You wouldn't dare speak up. And only when there were all these changes did people feel more comfortable. And so we flipped it on its head. And the whole point of the thesis was there is no new breed of worker. All human beings want these experiences and fulfillment out of work. It's only because of various changes in society and the law and whatnot that allowed it to manifest itself. And so that was our thesis. And as I'm sure we'll talk about, it actually informed a lot of the rest of my career.
That's really cool. And it's funny because a lot of those topics are still the discourse here it's funny. You think these are new, but nothing's really new under the sun, is it, Joe?
It's really not new. And if you go back to these early readings, you see interviews and diaries that people wanted those things then. They didn't dare speak up. He would get bounced out. There was no protections. And so I think it's a universal human need. And the most, the two biggest decisions you make in your life is your mate and your career. And I think people always want to be fulfilled in their careers.
Absolutely. And if you want Lou's perspective on that thesis and how it influenced his career in business, when you're done watching or listening to this episode, go back and check out episode 50 with Lou D'Ambrosio. It's an audio only one, but you can go check it out and hear his perspective of how that influenced his career climbing the corporate ladder on the business side. And then obviously we'll get into your law career in a minute, Joe. But Victor, I want to hear about your thesis experience. Sure, it's very fresh still in your brain, and
a little fresher than mine, anyhow.
A little bit. You said it, Joe. How has that influenced, particularly your law school experience and your early career here, and then also particularly if there was any relation to your study abroad experiences with your thesis?
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to talk directly about that connection with my study abroad experience first, because it's actually the same professor that I did my Schreier thesis with. She was my primary advisor. I actually did a research project with her as a sophomore during a study abroad experience. It was actually an honors study abroad, independent study sort of deal. So I had worked with her then. I had a really great experience. And I decided, hey, why not, double dip and do this experience with the Schreier thesis too. So I ended up talking about, so I was an accounting major. I talked about this concept of career plateau in the accounting profession. Sort of, why is there really stereotyped to be a large, not sure if the word is burnout, but more so the retention rate isn't as high as maybe it would be in other industries. So is this a product of burnout? Is this a product of career plateau? Is this a product of, issues with upward mobility in the workplace? So ultimately, that was what I discussed in my Schreier thesis. And the way it connects to my career now is I'm actually at an accounting firm, one of the accounting firms I talked about in my Schreier thesis. So, we'll see what my research sort of pan out with in my own independent experience. But it's funny, Joe, that connection with this concept of organizational psychology probably should have cited your thesis while I was writing mine, or found to edit, maybe taking a look at that book too, because I feel like there's a lot of interplay between the two.
That's awesome, Victor. Now, I want to ask each of you, because a really important decision. So, a past guest, Paul Suey, said, first career decision you make is, do I want to be a doctor, yes or no? So you both said no to that. Then you decided, I want to be a lawyer. I want to go into this kind of this white collar space. And then the next most important decision is, where are you going to law school? So, Joe, walk us through what your points of view were on like how you decided to go from Penn State, the University Scholars, to the law school that you picked, and what was your thought process on selecting the right one for you?
Sure. So the thought process of even choosing lawyer over, and it wouldn't have been doctor, it would have been organizational psychologist, is probably was where I was headed, came from two classes I had a junior year, two basic law classes, loved them. Unlike my college application where I was ordered to apply to 3 schools and didn't pick them, I thought, wow, I'm doing really well here. I could probably get into a really good school. So I applied to the top 10 schools, and I think I got into 8 of them.
Not bad. That's batting 800, right, Joe?
It was so fun, since I didn't have that experience applying to college. And my thinking was, if you're in that top 10, 12, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference in terms of where you're going to end up, where you're going to be happy, where you're going to enjoy yourself, and work hard and do your best. And so it came down to University of Pennsylvania, NYU. I had never set foot in New York City before. Things were different back then. I had a close friend who was 1 year ahead of me, and she was at NYU. And I thought it would be really exciting to live in Greenwich Village for 3 years. And so to go from Happy Valley to Greenwich Village, I thought that would be a lot of fun. And to live in New York City. So that's how I chose NYU Law School.
Excellent. And obviously law school and technology have changed, but what advice do you give to like our current scholars or young alumni who are in law school right now to make the most of their experience and be successful, no matter whether they go to NYU, Penn State, or any other great law school?
Yeah, I think the advice really has to come in college, and I'm doing a fair amount of law school counseling of college students, and it's law school is expensive. It's like a super, super expensive trade school. So you need to think long and hard about where you go. All things being equal, go to the best school you can go to. So highest grade you can get undergrad, study and crush the LSAT, and go to the best school you can. Footnote to that is, if your career goal is to be a public defender or spend your career in public interest, and you don't have someone else paying for law school, then a top 10 law school might not be a wise choice. And so it is a bit of a sliding scale there, and what your undergraduate loan debt is and how you're paying for law school has to be part of the conversation. But all that being equal, if that's not a concern, then I think you get yourself into the highest ranked law school you can, in a place and with sort of a vibe and personality, because they have different vibes and personalities, that's going to fit with you so you can be happy and relatively relaxed and thrive. And for some people, that's an urban environment. For others, it's out at Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, and on down the line.
Or even here in State College or in Carlisle.
Or even here in State College or Carlisle. And I think your question, which I didn't answer, was advice for folks in law school in terms of a career choice. And we're talking about mentoring and guidance and career advice. And absolutely, if you haven't already through your undergraduate experience, you need to be working with the folks in your placement office. But more importantly, folks that are 3, 5, 10, 15 years older than you, already working in various places where you think you might want to go. Find someone who either shares your undergraduate school or your law school, whether on LinkedIn or otherwise, and initiate a mentoring relationship.
Excellent advice. And in no small part, that's why both of you are here today as potential mentors for our prospective lawyer scholars. And so speaking of those prospective lawyers, Victor, walk us through how you went from being in a business degree to deciding to go to law school. What was your thought process, how you made that decision, and where you ultimately selected on going?
Sure. I think one of the first experiences, so outside of the opportunity to meet Joe, during my undergraduate experience, I think one of the tie-ins that I found while I was at Penn State was actually through my experiences as a peer tutor and a line ambassador. I felt that I really enjoyed sort of that building a relationship with somebody, client relationship, if you want to call it like mentorship, sort of, peer tutor to peer relationship. And I felt that being a lawyer ties extremely well with that sort of concept where, you end up with a slate of different clients. They come to you with different questions. They're generally very thought provoking, an opportunity to critically think about something, work with your other, co-counsel on those matters, and ultimately, minister to their needs. So I think that being a business student who sought to sort of build a career like that, I felt like being a business lawyer was the perfect place for me. So I ended up applying to a bunch of different law schools, took the LSAT, busting my butt to get the highest GPA possible. And sort of tying back to that point that Joe made about the law school decision, I think among the considerations for me was what city did I want to work in? And having been at Penn State Brandywine, just outside of Philadelphia, I had many opportunities to go into Philadelphia, meet people, get a little bit of a taste of what it would like to be working there. And that was ultimately how I came to the decision to attend Temple Law, along with the fact that between my GPA and LSAT score, I was able to obtain a full ride there. So those two considerations, the cost consideration and the city I wanted to work in, ultimately informed my decision to pursue business law at Temple Law.
Awesome. And yeah, we have no shortage of Schreier alumni who are also Temple Law alumni. So there's definitely a bit of a pipeline there, it seems like.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that, actually. Yeah, while I was looking at schools, while I was at Penn State, I actually reached out to Lisa from the Schreier Honors College. And once I was accepted to Temple Law, I said, hey, Lisa, do you know any Schreier alums who ended up going to Temple Law and work in Philadelphia? And she actually gave me a list of Schreier alums who worked in Philadelphia, pursuing the exact same track that I was pursuing. And I ended up grabbing coffee with a couple of them. So by all means, Schreier scholars, Penn State students, reach out to the people at the university because they have a good taste of what's going on with the alumni outside.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, there's the Penn State network and then there's the Schreier network, and it's so cross-disciplinary. So definitely great advice there, Victor, to talk to us here in the college, or, whether it's at Penn State Brandywine, the Smeal College of Business, College of Liberal Arts, wherever you find yourself, make sure you talk to us. So I think it's pretty obvious that if you're in law school, you want good grades. That definitely impacts at least at the front end of your career. So we're going to just call that like an assumption here. But there's additional activities, Victor, like law journals, multimedia programs, competitions, just clubs that you can have. Can you talk about why you decided to pursue some of those opportunities when you were at Temple, on top of an already very rigorous academic workload that keeps you busy all day long?
Yeah, I think much like the benefits from being connected with faculty, with clubs and organizations that you get at a place like Penn State, I think those same benefits and then some are magnified in the law school experience. So competitions, I think, were one of the main things that I ended up pursuing while I was at Temple Law. And I think that competitive drive that was fostered as a student athlete at Penn State Brandywine, I needed an outlet like that in law school. So I ended up finding all sorts of different competitions, case studies, that type of thing to pursue. And I think the best one that I ended up pursuing was the ABA tax competition. So that law student tax challenge was run by the larger ABA, but really their tax session and their young lawyers division. So as a competitor alone, I was able to go meet recent law school alumni who were working in a field of interest, tax law for me, and ultimately apply some of the skills I learned in the classroom to some real life client problems, and then present my research and findings to law firm partners in DC. And I ultimately ended up winning first place with the partner that I had from Temple Law who was competing with me. So that opportunity to network with a bunch of young lawyers, show off my skills to law firm partners, and apply those skills, I think has parlayed really well for me in the workplace now. And I would just recommend to anyone, whether you're an undergraduate student, law student, or even in the workforce right now, just to find as many ways to get involved in whatever outlets sort of best suit your interests and skill sets.
Awesome. Joe, do you give similar advice when you're talking with mentees and kind of engaging in those opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm talking to college student mentees, I do as I say, not as I did. I was singularly focused on studying and working out. And so I was pretty narrow in my focus in undergrad, and unfortunately didn't take advantage of all that Penn State has to offer. But certainly I learned my lesson as I got older, and I was much more engaged in law school.
and you're definitely involved now as an alum. But I do want to talk about your early career, Joe. So in preparation for this, you shared that your early days of a lawyer was kind of like a yo-yo type of experience, right? You started at a big firm, you left, and then you decided to settle in at a firm called DLA Piper in Philadelphia. So can you walk us through those early days navigating big law, as it's called, and how you've leveraged that experience in all these mentorship experiences that you're providing as a mentor?
Sure. I mean, my experience was certainly anything but a straight line. I mean, if you look back at it now, 32 years in a major firm, retired at age 60, boy, that seemed like it was pretty easy and uniform. But it really wasn't. So my honors thesis motivated me to want to practice labor law on the side of employees. And so I went to law school with the plan to represent labor unions, represent individual workers in cases against their employers. I spent my second summer at a large Philadelphia firm in their labor department. And large firms don't represent labor unions, they fight labor unions, and they defend discrimination cases. And I loved it. I loved the work, I loved the people, I loved the money. I had big student loans. So I started my career as a management side labor lawyer. But after 2 years, it then was a large firm, about 300 lawyers. I felt burned out, wasn't enjoying it, and decided I'll go back to my roots, quit the firm, joined a solo practitioner out in the suburbs, representing plaintiffs, individuals, and it was a disaster. He was literally a fraud, and that'd be a whole other podcast. So after 4 or 5 months, I realized that was a mistake. I went back to my honors advisor, Lori Perman, who was thrilled that I was coming back into the fold and encouraged me to go apply for a PhD program in organizational psychology. Be a good social scientist. That's what she wanted me to do instead of go to law school. Fortunately, I went back to one of my advisors at my first firm, coincidentally also named Lori. And he said, we have a former partner who's now a headhunter. Why don't you go talk to him? Talked to him and found DLA Piper and stayed for 32 years. So anything but a straight line. And one thing I actually forgot to mention, even law school itself, I was so unhappy after the first semester, I wanted to quit. And my mother stepped up again and said, no, one more semester. If you want to quit after spring, fine, stick it out one more semester. So there were many sort of hurdles along the way, twists and turns, and getting advice from others, and sometimes having to weigh between conflicting advice and Laurie Perman telling me to be a good social scientist and Laurie Coburn saying, be a lawyer, and then picking what's best for you.
Well, and Joe, I'm going to go off script here. Isn't it fair to say like a lot of the social science research skills that you were developing in those organizational psychology classes probably are things that you've used as an attorney working in labor law, right?
100%. And so my practice drifted away from labor law toward more general commercial litigation, although I always had probably 20 or 30% of my practice in the employment law area. But it certainly informed my interest in, and I think skills in, interacting with clients, interacting with colleagues, junior colleagues. I got heavily involved in hiring because I've always loved the employer-employee relationship and wanting to work with young people and young lawyers. And so, yeah, the study in that class and in my honors classes focused on work sort of led to sort of those interests, and in part the type of law I practiced, but in large part the way I practiced it and the people that I dealt with.
Awesome. So you talked about you're in these hiring positions, and looking at your resume or your CV when you shared it, Joe, you've had a lot of leadership roles at DLA before you retired, including being a managing partner, not just a partner, but a managing partner. So how do you go about, as an early career attorney like Victor is, to set yourself up for success down the road once you kind of get past that like grinded out associate phase and move your way up the ladder?
Yeah, the single best thing you do is hone your craft, be excellent at what you do, make yourself important to the clients and to the partners, and don't worry about being the one running anything. I would say in the early years, observe those that are in leadership positions and learn from them, get to know them, and make it a goal if you want to. But I would spend the formative years being the best at what you're doing developing all of your skills and relationships, and you'll develop leadership skills along the way if you want them. It's not for everybody. There are wildly successful law partners who don't have an interest in devoting that time to being in charge of hiring, or having to deal with a dispute among staff, or how much are we going to spend on the holiday party, administrative things. It's not for everybody. But if it is something you're interested in, you sort of grow into it. And I frankly wouldn't spend much time thinking about it in the early years. But as you grow into the firm and start spending time with those folks that are in leadership positions, it sort of happen organically.
Excellent. And a final part that I want to talk about right now in that vein, Joe, is something that I think will resonate no matter whether you're a seasoned partner or Schreier scholar who's still navigating classes and clubs, is time management. So you said yes to all these leadership opportunities at DLA. What strategies did you use, knowing that you're responsible for billable hours and all these commitments that you're saying yes to on top of your main responsibilities? What strategies did you use that a current student might be able to implement now here at Penn State?
Well, a couple of things. One goes back to one of my early mentors at my first firm, who told me to be myself. And when it came to how many hours I was comfortable working, how many weekends I was comfortable sacrificing, and practice the way you want to practice and see if it fits the firm. And so I always did that. Never sacrifice health for wealth. You have to have an exercise program. You have to eat right. You have to get enough sleep. It's sort of along the lines of a pay yourself first that you get from financial advisors. You got to pay yourself first when it comes to your health and your wellness. And if you make that a habit and then, manage your time, you can build the necessary hours, find time for management, but always keep an eye on sort of the whole big picture. That regular exercise program is going to be great for relaxation. I tell young people all the time, a healthy mind needs a healthy body. And I do think that's a very big part of my success, and I think a lot of people's success.
Great advice, Joe. Now we've talked big law, and obviously we've had many episodes where you can get some additional opinions on kind of how to navigate early careers in law, especially at big law firms. But Victor, you took what I'm going to call a not quite the first thing that comes to mind kind of path for attorneys. And you're, like you said, at the accounting firm of Deloitte, which is one of the big consulting and accounting firms. And I want to ask, how did you decide on that path? And can you tell us about the hiring process that you went through for that versus kind of the big law, kind of process boutique firms that Joe's firm and other students who are going that more traditional route, if you will, take on?
Sure. I would say that there's actually more similarity than you would think. So in the Big Four setting, a lot of them have their lawyers concentrated in their Washington national tax or national tax offices in DC or up in New York, because that's where a lot of the sort of intersections between tax and the law might intersect with one another. But at local offices like the Philadelphia office for Deloitte, we actually have a very large international tax practice. And our practice consists of, I'd say, like 60% or 2/3 lawyers, 40% to 1/3 CPAs. So more than you would think. Actually, in my intern group, we had 3 JD students and 2 CPA track students in our cohort for the international tax program that summer. So I guess the way the internship program would work is sort of the fall of my second year of law school. So I guess this was fall 2022. Shot out applications to the Big Four. And I came to the conclusion to do that because I had seen that a lot of tax lawyers that I knew had experience working at a Big Four, PwC, EY, KPMG, and Deloitte. So I sort of just, followed the path that's already been charted before. So I sent my applications out to those places, heard back in December from Deloitte, got my interview, and I interned there with my international tax group in the summer of 2023. So to compare it to a big law setting, most big law entry-level attorneys would be a summer associate during that same time period. So honestly, very similar in that regard where, assuming the internship program went well and the team enjoyed working with you and you enjoyed being there, you would get a return offer that August. I got it the last day of my internship program, accepted a couple weeks later, and then here I am now starting, I started 6 months after graduation at Deloitte.
Awesome. So you're still in the early days. So Not too much to say about the job so far. You're still learning. But I do want to kind of pivot a little bit here because I kind of buried the lead, and Victor, you alluded to this earlier, but how did you two meet? Because it's never an accident that I have a panel style episode here. So where did you first interact, and how did this mentorship start off?
Yeah, I guess I could kick off with some of that. So in terms of, staying involved, communicating with your professors, that sort of theme that I pitched earlier, this was very much so connected with that. So I had told basically everyone I could at Penn State Brandywine, hey, I'm really interested in law school. I think I want to be a lawyer. No one in my family was a lawyer. No extended family members were lawyers. Quite frankly, not many Filipino Americans that I've come to meet over the years are lawyers. So I would love to be connected with Penn State alums, Penn State Brandywine alums, et cetera, that pursued law. I would say, okay, I'll let you know if I think of someone. And then early in the pandemic, I would say this is probably March, April 2020, I got an email from one of our career services people saying, hey, we just had a Penn State alum, connect with us recently. He's a lawyer. I instantly thought of you. How about I connect you two? What do you think of that? I was like, sure. I'm inside 24/7, especially. My calendar is wide open for that conversation. So we ended up meeting online. Joe and he introduced me to a few attorneys at his firm so I could learn more about the law schools I was interested in, the different pathways I could pick. And yeah, honestly, we've been connected ever since then. It's been incredible. Honestly, extremely beneficial to my career just in all stages. I think it's such a funny full circle moment being here right now. I talked to Joe before I even took the LSAT around when I was taking it the first time. I'd send him my scores, say, hey, maybe I'll take it again, send him my scores again, send him a list of schools, personal statements, resumes, all that sort of stuff. So it's been extremely helpful so far in my career.
Yeah. It's been great fun for me.
That is a really cool opportunity there. And Joe, thank you for, kind of teeing all this up, everything you've done for Victor. And I know you've mentored many, many other scholars and Penn State students over the years. So really appreciate that. That being said, I know you're both very involved locally in the Philadelphia area in different activities. And then also here at Penn State, both at the Brandywine campus, at University Park. Why do you both, despite obviously, Joe, you're retired now, so pretend you're still an active attorney, and Victor, you're just trying to get your career established, but you're both making time for your communities. Why do you prioritize that when you could be focused on other things?
Victor, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I could kick that off. I would say that especially being a recent graduate, my experience at Penn State was incredible. The study abroad, the mentorship, the tutoring services, the in-class experience, the out-of-class experiences, if you want to be that general with it, was incredible. But I think as a student and as a recent alum, you could sort of see, oh, this is where, Penn State could be a little bit stronger in different areas. Or, oh, this was an area where I got mentorship. I would love it if someone would have said that to me maybe a year earlier. And I think that's really informed my desire to give back. Penn State has talked about for years now being a university with, the largest alumni network. And I think one of the core benefits of that alumni network is you get so many people who have gone through Penn State and said, hey, this is an area that I would love to give back or reinvest in, or this was really great for me. I would love for another student to hear about that opportunity, or I would love to foster that opportunity even more. So I think Penn State is as strong as it is, not just because of obviously the prowess of the university, the talent of the professors, the students that go there, but also because of the alumni's desire and ability to reinvest into the university and keep it going, for X amount of years going forward.
Yeah, and one thing I would add, and I think this holds true for either young alums or mid-career alums that don't have the free time that I do, or retired alums who do now have some more free time. As you know, Sean, I've been involved in University Park for many years with the Honors College and otherwise, but it's inconvenient. It's 3 hours away. And I would get these invitations in the mail for a wonderful panel discussion on a Tuesday evening, and I could never go. And it was like out of the blue in 2019 when someone suggested I get involved at Penn State Brandywine, where I did not go. I was 4 years at University Park, and it's been spectacular. It's 15 minutes from my house. So what I would say is, especially those like Victor and mid-career, they're juggling a lot of things, get involved in your local campus. The Commonwealth campuses, it's a wonderful system. They tend to have the most financial need students. They tend to have the most first-generation students. Your money and your time goes a long way, and it's convenient when you're super busy. And so I'd love to know what the statistics are in terms of the average distance that any Pennsylvania person is from a Commonwealth campus. But even if you didn't go there and offer to speak on a panel, offer to mentor some students. If you're in the position to donate some money, donate some money. It's a wonderful way to give back, and you'll be able to fit it into your busy life.
Yeah, I think that statistic, Joe, is something like 90% of Pennsylvanians live within 30 minutes of a campus, something to that effect. So I'm sure our Office of Government Relations could clarify that for me in the comments, if it's about something like that, though. Now, I want to go back to something you just said, Joe. In terms of the philanthropy, you've been a gracious supporter of the College of Liberal Arts here, and also Penn State Brandywine. And so first, on behalf of all of us, thank you for that. That's incredible. And then second, again, kind of like, why is it so important for alumni to give back? Well, whether it's $10 like Mr. Schreier's first gift to Penn State when he was a young alum himself, or it's, the $10 million, $25 million gifts that you're seeing in the news. Why is it so important to do?
Well, two things. One thing I think about, Joe Paterno used to tell his graduating athletes to pay back their scholarships once they started making money in football. So it was easy for me because the school was so cheap. But think about whether you can pay back any scholarship or grant you ever got from Penn State. Number two, also, if you're like me, Penn State changed my life. Who knows what would have happened if I didn't come to Penn State. So it's very meaningful to my life, and it makes me want to give back. Number three, I live near Swarthmore College. I don't have the statistics on what their endowment is per student, but it's astronomical. And the Penn State mission to educate the students of this Commonwealth, even though the raw number is probably very large, much greater financial need. And whether it's, sponsoring an internship, which is something my wife and I did here at Brandywine, or the emergency fund, which it's a really interesting, a lot of people don't even think about that. There are students who they get to middle of the semester and they may have to drop out. There are so many ways that you can give back. And so, start small if you need to start small, or just show up and be a mentor or speak on a panel. It doesn't have to be money. It can be your time.
Yep. Time, talent, treasure, testimonial. And I think between the two of you, you're knocking all four out of the park. So thank you for that. And Victor, we'll give you a year and then we'll start having some fun conversations with you. Now, I want to pivot it back to law and the finance and everything, accounting, people skills. So this is a question I want you both to answer. What skills, whether that's people skills, technical skills, or something else that maybe I'm not phrasing this correctly, but what should scholars be working on now if they're interested in career paths that are even remotely similar to either of yours, whether that's working at Deloitte, big law, or even public interest law, like you referenced, Joe, or even in education and mentorship and employee onboarding and training?
Yeah. Well, I'll take that first. I think a strong work ethic goes without saying, so it didn't even bother to say that. Attention to detail, which was one of my dings in my first review at my first firm, hyper attention to detail, very strong reading, writing, communication skills, and calm under pressure. And I was a litigator, but any type of pursuit in the law, there's going to be intensity, and you need to learn how to be cool under pressure. If you're in a large organization like Deloitte or a DLA, there's going to be a lot of internal competition. You have to avoid being jealous, being envious, to be the best person that you can be. Have your best day, have your best year, and don't get sucked into any kind of really sort of jealousy that can occur in very high performing, intense organizations.
Yeah, I would say to piggyback off of all of that, I think a lot of those skills sort of that Joe talked about and those traits can be fostered with and developed even further with an appreciation for multiple perspectives. I think in the law, for example, when reading, all these different court opinions, inevitably, right, not everything is a 9-0 victory or a 9-0 split, and where the judges land on something. Sometimes it's a 5-4. and you'll get, a majority opinion, a concurring opinion, a dissenting opinion, another concurring opinion, agree in part but dissent in part. And I think an appreciation of all those different perspectives and a willingness to open your eyes and see, oh, there's more than one way to look at an issue or more than one way to examine sort of a client's problem can be fostered through things like studying abroad, through taking a wide variety of classes, not just in corely what you're interested in, but maybe branch out a little bit. So I think that interest can be fostered even first at the undergraduate level, parlayed in law school, and then obviously beyond. It'll help you understand sort of your coworkers a little bit better, the different clients you'll have, that type of thing.
Awesome. And Victor, I bet even just reading a 9-0 opinion, maybe there's different rationales for by that, and learning how to think. How is your opposition in litigation going to think and present their argument? It's like a chess match, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Victor, specifically, since you're like starting your career, you're actively in the accounting space. How is AI starting to impact your work and helping you and maybe hindering you as a budding lawyer?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, we get all sorts of messages and editorials and whatnot about AI on almost a regular basis at Deloitte. We have our own proprietary artificial intelligence software, too, that we can use. For me personally, I've noticed that the way that I research is different than the way even the senior associates on my team research, the managers and the senior managers. If they want to learn about a new sort of revenue ruling that was passed, the way we all get to that revenue ruling and the way we read commentary about it, I've noticed is already different. And I'm sure the people that come in, once I'm a senior, those new associates, I'm sure will be using artificial intelligence and leveraging it, way better than I am currently. So I would say I usually would maybe use it to kind of kickstart some research, but ultimately I end up falling back into the same exact research strategies that I use, as a law student and as a Penn State student. And I think the key to understanding its application in the workspace is just trying to stay up to date as much as possible. You only have so much time between, when I'm expected to bill and my expectations outside the workplace to sort of upskill, by 10, 15, 20 hours in artificial intelligence. But if I could get a little bit better, week over week, I would say that's the biggest recommendation I would have for people going forward.
Good stuff. Now, this question is for both of you. I am not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. I definitely didn't enjoy my accounting class in my MBA program. I'm more of a qualitative person. So that means there's a lot of things I did not think to ask either of you today. So what are some things that we should have talked about, or questions, particularly Joe, that you might get from your mentees, or Victor, maybe you were asking in law school, that would be really helpful before we move into our lightning round with our reflective questions at the end?
I'll go, because I've probably done a lot more interviewing than you have, Victor, and it's interesting the questions I get. There must be a script out there, but one of them is why I chose the firm. I won't deal with that, but why did you stay here so long? What was it about it that caused you to stay? Say that without sounding like they're realizing I've been there forever. And I talk about sort of the local environment. What drives, my happiness every day, getting off that elevator with a smile on a Monday, to make sure you're going to be in a place where you enjoy working with the people. Because a lot of the firms, the money's the same, the client's the same, a lot of the things are the same. But are the people that you're working with, are they fun, funny, hardworking, supportive? Is it going to be a good fit for you? And be the kind of person, this is less to do with the organization than I think probably the way I am, kind of developed an ability to look on the bright side and see the glass half full, and realize that if there's a challenge in one of my cases, it's a challenge around the office, walking down the street in a huff to another firm is not going to likely be the answer. And just to sort of think it through and have an ability to be appreciative of what you have, in this fabulous job and these clients and these colleagues, and not take that lightly. And it allows you to, through your career and even in your personal life, to weather some difficulties if you develop that ability to be grateful and look at what you do have and not obsess over what you don't have.
I'm going to echo a comment that Joe made earlier, in that it's not a straight line. Even just if you look at the microcosm of being a Penn State student. So I applied to Penn State actually as a finance major. And then before I started, I switched to engineering. Thought I was going to go to University of Park for aerospace engineering. Then I decided I wanted to stay at Penn State Brandywine. I switched to their multidisciplinary engineering program. Then I decided I didn't want to do engineering anymore again. So I ended up switching to accounting after that. So even within that sort of 2-year period, it's not a straight line. But, despite all the major changes, I still made it out in 4 years, and I'm here now. And I ended up in an accounting firm. So everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely. So these last few questions here for the both of you, I want each of you to answer these. And this is really just trying to reflect and wrap up our conversation over the next few minutes. So first, a chance for each of you to brag. What would you each say is your biggest success to date?
Yeah, I think, I guess, being accepted to and pursuing law school, I feel like it's definitely one of them. I feel like it's mildly a cop-out, though, so I'm going to bring up a more specific example. So once I got to Temple Law, this was just out of the pandemic, or really still in the pandemic, fall of 2021, and a lot of student organizations were sort of falling apart because of, we can't meet in person, being virtual for a full year. And, as a Penn State student, being a part of student organizations was one of my favorite things. So I had joined Temple Law's Sports Law Society as a first-year student. We had maybe one event that year. And over the course of my 3 years, I tried to be as much or as involved in that as possible, pour into it as much as I can. And my senior year, we ended up sending, or I guess my 3L year rather, we sent students to 4 different competitions, locally as close as Villanova, as far as Tulane University down to New Orleans. We had speaker panels in both the fall and the spring. And now after I graduated, our law journal symposium was actually based around sports law. So we've been from basically sort of is this club even going to exist at Temple Law anymore, to now one of the premium, in my opinion, organizations at Temple Law. So that was just one thing that I was really happy about in my Temple Law experience.
I guess for me, it would be after the first 2 rough experiences and sort of swinging and missing twice, spending 32 years in a very high stress, intense environment, and developing an ability to roll with the punches, deal with the setbacks, deal with the pressure and the challenges, and truly feel like I was happy and fulfilled virtually the entire time. Never the highest paid lawyer in the office, never the hardest working, but I think I developed an ability to be one of the most satisfied and fulfilled. Go back to some of the lessons I learned doing my thesis, and so I guess that's what I'm most proud of had a happy and fulfilling career in what can be a very, very stressful and difficult environment.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a lawyer speak as glowingly, Joe, so I think you did something right. On the flip side of that question, though, to the two of you, what is a big transformational learning moment or mistake that you've made in your career? And most importantly, for our scholars watching or listening, what did you learn from that and integrate moving forward?
I'll take this one because this is one I just remembered this morning. I was a young partner, probably it's probably 2003, 2004, and I had this routine at the end of the day where I would take the train every day. I could turn off my computer exactly 10 minutes before my train time. It took a long time for computers to power down, put my computer in my bag and sort of, hustle to the elevator and get to the lobby and practically jog through the lobby and 2 blocks and get to the platform, within about 30 seconds of when the train would come. And I did that for years. And one night we're working late and one of the associates said to me, he said, I see you jogging down the street at night. What are you doing? I said, well, this is great, Joe. And I explained, I get this great routine and I could get there just in time. And he looked at me like I was from outer space and said, why do you do that to yourself? You're a partner. Why don't you turn off your computer 15 minutes early? And it was like a lightning bolt. Like, why am I doing that? And so since that time, it just give yourself a little bit of a break. And look, I was ambitious. I'm still ambitious. I respect ambition. But I've never forgot that. And I do try to use that to get a little bit of a break, try not to be so rushed. And another takeaway from that story is you can learn from people younger than you. You learn from your mentees. And so those opportunities to learn are really all around you if you're open to them.
Joe, what's the best thing that you've learned from Victor?
Boy, Well, I learned that I love being a mentor of young college students because it was, but I just dove into it in 2019. Um, but it reaffirmed my belief that being highly organized and focused, you're going to have success in life. And what I learned a lot from Victor is one of the great benefits of going to a Commonwealth campus. Because right around that time I met you, Victor, I was just learning about the Commonwealth campus. It's shame on me, I live near one. And it's like that old Temple commercial. It could have gone anywhere. They chose Temple. And knowing Victor, he could have spent 4 years at Happy Valley. Why didn't he do that? He wanted to play college basketball and tennis. Wanted to be close to home, and so I've learned more about your profile of your Penn State student you choose as a Commonwealth campus, and we have wonderful students that have all kind of stories like Victor.
Awesome. Now, Victor, I'm going to pose that same question back to you after you answer what your biggest transformational learning moment or mistake was.
I would say a transformational learning moment for me came both while I was at Comcast and then was reaffirmed once I interned at Deloitte. So I interned at Comcast after my first year of law school. And I've always had this tendency, especially, working in person again, for the first time in who knows how long. At that point, I wanted to take on every single opportunity. I wanted to tell every single, senior attorney, oh, I could do a project for you too. I could do this for you. I could do that for you. And incidentally, everyone had work for me to do. Somehow I found myself working at night as an intern. And while I was making, a good impression of people, I was like, this was kind of a lot. I have to be really conscious of sort of my own bandwidth and opportunity to take on work. Because like Joe had said earlier, it's not just about doing the work, it's also being excellent at what you do. And that was reaffirmed to me by my sort of mentor / manager at Comcast at one point when she noticed, this is a lot that you're taking on right now. Let's make sure that we're performing, at our highest ability on all these different assignments. So while, I would always advocate for people to be involved, work for as many people as possible once they start working, just be conscious of how many projects and how many opportunities you're taking on, because these are all very busy people. And at some points, they will all find something for you to do eventually. Even if it seems like you sort of have a calm moment while you're working.
Under promise, over deliver instead of the other way around.
Yeah, you definitely do not want to over promise and over deliver to people. You want to summarize it with that point.
Now, Victor, what's the best thing that you've learned from Joe as his mentee?
It's hard to pinpoint a singular best item. I think the value of a mentor figure is definitely one of them. Just the impact that it can have. Both, at this point, Joe and I have had conversations over the phone. We've met in person. We've met over food. And at the end of the day, all those conversations, I've been able to read something that I tie back to, something that I share with another person, sort of that breadth of just how impactful mentorship could be is not just on the individual, but on, the other people that I could touch with the same sort of advice that Joe has given me. I would also kind of reaffirm the point that mentors are people. So, on one hand, it can be extremely intimidating for someone who's 20, 21 years old to approach someone who's had sort of the breadth of a career that Joe has had. But at the end of the day, we end up talking about Penn State football. We end up talking about what our families are doing, places we've traveled. Like at the end of the day, we're all people. So we should all remember that as we approach these sort of mentorship, mentor-mentee relationships.
So in that vein of those relationships, Joe, you've mentored many students. Victor, you've referenced other mentors from your internships or law school, from your time at Brandywine. What is one singular piece of advice that each of you would give to somebody to make sure that they have a successful mentoring relationship?
I would say come prepared for the conversations that you have. Because the first point I would have said was remember that mentors are human. So my second bullet point would be that you should come prepared to the conversations. At the end of the day, especially in a career like working in the Big Four or working at a law firm, everyone is very busy. And getting 30 minutes of their time, an hour of their time is hugely important both for them because there's obviously, that's time they're taking away from their work, away from their family and friends, etc. But also for you, learning the value of your time, from the jump. Because at the end of the day, once you end up working, leading meetings, etc., you want to come to those situations prepared. So you could treat that mentor-mentee relationship very similarly. You should come with some questions. Inevitably, you're going to veer off topic. Maybe you'll end up talking about Penn State football or where you traveled recently. But I would just come prepared with something you want to talk about, the moment you get there.
Hey, that's really good, Victor. I hadn't thought of that. Yes. So as a mentee, be prepared, be responsive, have multiple mentors. I'm a sort of an end career mentor, maybe someone 5 years older than you. So look for multiple mentors in terms of age. Maybe the fit doesn't work for the mentor that's assigned to you. My first law firm assigned me someone. I liked him. Wasn't perfect. I found someone down the hall, and he didn't know it, but I started being friendly with him. He was the same age, 6 years older than me. And I ended up learning a lot more from him. And without using the word mentor, he effectively was. Seek out different points of view. As I mentioned, I got conflicting points of view about what I should do with my life. So two awesome mentors suggested completely different directions, but they both made great points, and then I made my own decision. So get different points of view.
Excellent. Now, there's been a lot of name dropping in this episode. Now, besides maybe Mama Kernen, are there any other folks from your time at Penn State, whether that's thesis advisors or friends or faculty or coaches, that both of you want to give shout outs to?
I could definitely run the gamut pretty quick, but I think with a few ahead of time. I would say just the entirety of the business faculty at Penn State Brandywine. But I remember my first business professor was Professor Christina O'Lear, or rather my first accounting professor, I should say. She kind of reaffirmed my interest in accounting, made it extremely appealing to me. And Professor Stanton was someone who I'd done a few honors independent studies with. So I would say the two of them. But also the advisor for my Schreier signature travel program was Professor Kevin Furlong, professor in geosciences. Has absolutely nothing to do with anything that I do right now. But I just had a really great time pursuing that program because, as a Commonwealth student, I didn't know a single person that was going on that program to Thailand. And I spent 3.5 weeks there. That was the longest I'd ever been away from home. But Professor Kevin Furlong just made it an incredibly welcoming environment to me. He was always up for conversation. As someone who was participating in the class portion of the program virtually, before we traveled to Thailand, he made me feel included and incorporated, very responsive to email. So he made that Schreier experience for me very memorable.
Yeah, so I'd have to say Jim Eisenstein and Larry Spence in the political science department. That's another wonderful thing about Schreier. I have friends who went to massive state universities and not an honors program and never developed relationships with professors, but I developed a relationship with two professors that got invited to their retirement parties. And Lori Perman in the sociology department, who Lou and I took that class with. And of course, Louis D'Ambrosio, who I met our junior year in the old University Scholars Lounge at the Willard Building, and became good friends, and of course did the thesis together.
Excellent. And there's a bit of a history lesson for you that we used to be in Willard before moving to Atherton and Simmons, if you didn't already know that. Now, we're wrapping up our time. What is the one final piece of advice you would leave for scholars, especially those interested in law? What's something that we can drop on Instagram or a YouTube short that's your little bit of wisdom here at the end?
Victor, lead it off.
Yeah, I would say read as much as possible, write as much as possible. Obviously, as a Schreier student, you have no shortage of that in the thesis process. But once I was a law student, I think and maybe this is partially my fault, but every semester in my 2L and my 3L year, I wrote at least one piece or one paper rather, as long as my thesis. So if you get that reading and writing practice early as a Penn State student, it'll be, very transferable to your experience as a law student. I would also say to study abroad. I've learned now that I'm at Deloitte, PTO is very valuable and also can be very sparing. So I recommend traveling as often as you can, save up that money, put it in the piggy bank, participate in one of these Penn State or Schreier study abroad programs, because they have all sorts of either short programs that would just travel over a break, a Maymester like I did, or a full semester. I would just travel as much as you can.
And don't forget, we have funding available, so come talk to us if you want to do one of those programs and you're worried about finances.
Good plug. I would say get advice from practicing lawyers in a field you might be interested in. Law school is very expensive. You don't have to go. We need good lawyers. You always need more good lawyers, but it's a very expensive choice. And there's lots of people out there. Go on LinkedIn, find someone from Penn State who went to Penn State who's now a lawyer. I can guarantee you they'll almost always respond. Get on a Zoom, have a cup of coffee, learn about it before you make that decision.
And there are no shortage of Schreier alumni that are in law that you can tap into as well, specifically within the broader Penn State community, Joe. Now, you mentioned LinkedIn. Is that the best way to reach out to either or both of you if somebody watching or listening wants to connect and really dive deeper into these topics than we had time for today?
Yeah, I think so. Easy to find on there. Message me, and then I'll get right back.
I would agree with that. Same here.
Excellent. And now for the hardest hitting question of the day and possibly your entire legal careers. If you were a flavor of Penn State, Berkey, Creamery, ice cream, which would each of you be? And most importantly, I need to hear a really strong oral argument. Why would you be that flavor?
Well, I love being outside. Even before I retired, I spent as much time outside as I could, go on hiking and camping trips every year, do a lot of local hiking. So I think I am the Arboretum Breeze.
Ooh, good choice.
I'm going to have to try that flavor. I've never heard of it. Sounds awesome, though. For me, I would go with chocolate chip cookie dough. People eat chocolate chip cookies, any sort of environment, Easter, holiday season now that we're in, maybe even Thanksgiving as a dessert. I feel like I enjoy being in a wide variety of environments. Chocolate chip cookies are served in a wide variety of environments. So there you go. That's my, it's the best I could do.
Versatile Victor, the chocolate chip cookie dough.
Yeah.
Awesome. Two excellent flavors. Chocolate chip cookie dough is one of my personal favorites. So you all get bonus points for some excellent flavor choices. Joe, Victor, thank you both so much for joining us here on Following the Gong and sharing your insights. Before I let each of you have the last word, this wouldn't be a YouTube video if I didn't tell you that you need to like, subscribe, leave us a comment, all those good things. If you're engaging with us on the audio version on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you're following or whatever the verb of the week is on those and leave a rating. And with that, I'm going to let each of you have the final word here. So Victor, I'll start with you, and then Joe, you can see us out.
Thank you, Sean, for having us here today. Thank you, Joe, for inviting me to be a co-podcast participant with you. This has been an awesome experience. I just love being involved with Schreier as much as I can be. So this is great. Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you. My first ever podcast, and I can't imagine someone better to do it with than Victor. Sorry we couldn't be up at Happy Valley today, but look forward to seeing you in the spring.